Senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall. For he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. The battle outside our raging will shoot and shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are a-changing. Come mothers and fathers throughout the land, don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly fading. Please get out of the new one. If you can, lend your hand, for the times they are a-changing. The line it is drawn, the curse it is cast. The slow one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading, and the first one now will later be last, for the times they are a-changing.
Hey friends, really good to see y'all. You know, one of our favorite places to travel in this big, beautiful bus is to Holland, Michigan. In fact, one of our very first events that launched us in 2018 happened right inside of that building. Then we were back here in 2020. We came back here in 2022. We've already been here in 2024. And as much as we love the good people of Holland, Michigan, we wish we didn't have to keep coming back, to tell you the truth. We wish we didn't have to keep traveling around in a bus trying to remind all of us that faith, hope, and love is not owned by any political party. Now, you would be surprised how often when we pull up in this bus into a parking lot, or we pull up into a church, or we pull up into a gas station, somebody comes walking up to us, and you can see the confusing look on their face. It happened just 2 days ago in Hudson, Wisconsin. A man came up, he saw our signs that said faith, hope, and love, faith, not fear, hope, not hate, love for all. And then he saw that there was a Walls Harris sign, and the man was as confused as you can imagine. And he said, I just don't understand why you would be into that and then vote for that. In his mind, he said, I've never known a good Christian who could vote for a Democrat. And I said, I'd like to introduce myself to you. My name is Doug. And that's one of the reasons we travel around the country, because a lot of us have been told, sometimes from our churches, sometimes from our leaders, sometimes from our parents, sometimes from our children, that there's only one way to vote if you're a Christian person. Now, we know that that's not true, but not everybody knows that's not true. But a lot of people feel stuck. And one of the things we've been finding as we've traveled around the country is there's a whole lot of people who thought that their faith and their Republican identity were wedded together. And as they felt them start to pull apart, they didn't know if they had to leave their faith behind in order to not stick with a Republican Party that turned into conspiracy theorists, Christian nationalists, insurrection leaders, and people that want to tell us that democracy is a maybe in the United States. So as we travel around this country, we're really glad to see good people like you who know what the truth is. But we also know that there's a whole lot of people around here who don't feel so safe. Let me tell you one little story about a person we met right inside that theater. She was 64 years old, she told me, and she said she had driven an hour and a half to be here. And I said, well, that's a long way to come to an event. Why would you come so far? And she said, well, in my town, I can't tell anyone that I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump in this election, 2020. I said, well, why is that? Because I own the hardware store, she said. And she knew that in her town, if anybody finds out, they're going to go to Home Depot or Lowe's, and they're not going to come to her hardware store. This is what a lot of people are facing. Another woman that we met in Pennsylvania, her husband had died, and she said, I'm going to not vote for Republican for the first time in my life. And we said, hey, we're putting together little video stories of people like you. Would you mind telling your story? She said, oh no, honey, I play bridge with the girls on Thursday. because she knew what the cost there would be if she broke the rules that their religious or community groups had told them. So that's one of the reasons we're so excited to see you. And one of the things that's so important, we know there's 3 things that make people change, that when people are going through a change rather, a behavioral change, a thought change, 3 things are always in place. Now this doesn't matter if somebody has changed their eating habits, they got a Noom or something, or if somebody picked up pickleball and they want to start a new sport or activity, or if somebody changes their political identity. There's always 3 things that are in place. Someone has picked up some new information. They learned something new. They found out about something. Now, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time standing here telling you about what a problem Donald Trump is. That man is like a self-cleaning oven. He does all the work for you. If you're looking at Donald Trump and you see what he's up to and you're convinced you should still vote for him, then there's nothing people like us are going to say about it. But there's a whole lot of people who are learning something new. They don't want their president telling them that immigrants are eating people's pets. This has just gotten ridiculous. They don't want people hating on America. They don't want to have presidents who are telling us that it's their way or no way. That doesn't fit with a whole lot of people who think that we live in a democracy. So people have taken in new information. That happens. You're probably here with your own story of having learned something new, made some kind of a change. But new information isn't enough. People also need an invitation to act on that new information. I mean, look, a lot of us know a lot of things we don't do anything about. We're not sure what to do about it. But when someone comes around and says, hey, here's a new way to behave, you could do that new way, that means a lot. You are the most important person in somebody's life. Tim reminded us that back in the Campus Crusade for Christ days of the 1970s, everybody remember that group, Campus Crusade for Christ? I was really influenced by that group and what they did. They used to have a phrase, each one, teach one. We started to adopt that. Each one, reach one. Each one of you has somebody for whom you're going to be the most important person to give them an invitation to act different in this election. Now, you're not going to be able to ask people to change political parties, because political identity and religious identity, boy, that takes a long time. And there's a whole lot of people that aren't ready to say, I am a Democrat. But there's a lot of people who are willing to say, I might just vote for one this time. I can act differently, even if my identity isn't fully with that person. So there's a lot of people who you're going to be important in. And then the third is they need a community to participate in. People need an us. Most of us, no matter the topic, we'd rather be wrong and together than right and alone. So people don't like the idea that if they change their mind, change their behavior, change their way of being, that it's going to leave them alone. They want somebody to be with. And for a lot of people, political parties do that. For a lot of people, political parties aren't enough. They need something else. So that's what we're doing here. That's what this is going to be about. So tonight, you're going to hear some stories from some people. You're going to hear some stories from some people whose minds have changed. You're going to hear some invitations to join in. We're going to give you some tools that you can utilize to go and invite people. We're going to give you ways that you can leave here with your reach one attitude, and you can reach some new people and some things that you can do. And we're going to hopefully create a sense of community with you and the other people around this area. And when they make a change, they know that they're not going to be standing alone, because they've got their own hardware store, they've got their own bridge group, they've got their own sense of, I just feel like my friends don't talk to me anymore, and if I put the wrong sign in my front yard, what's that going to mean? So they need some people to be around them. So we're really glad that you're here, and I'm going to introduce you to Daniel Deitrich. Daniel wrote a song about all this. This song, it tells this story for him in his way. He'll tell you a little bit about this. This thing showed up in our world in 2020 as we were driving around in a bus that looked a lot like this one. We called Dan and said, hey, we heard that song you're singing. It sounds like stuff we're up to. Would you like to join us? He said, sure. Came and did an event with us. We said, that went great. Would you like to do another one? Called him back. Said, we're going to be traveling around the country. Could you come with us? He said, well, that song just got me fired from my church, so I'm a little more free than I used to be. And this is the song you're going to hear now. It's called The Hymn for the 81%.
Woo! Oh, not that short, Doug, but thank you. It's good to be back in Holland. I'm just from down the road in Stevensville, Michigan. So it's always good to be back in the mitten. Yeah, I wrote this song because I was so confused looking at the larger-than-life faith leaders that informed my faith growing up throw their weight behind a man that looked nothing like Jesus. And so I put those feelings, those questions, that anger, that resentment, that that big question of what into this song, and maybe your story is in here as well. It goes like this. I grew up in your churches, Sunday morning and evening service. I knelt in tears at the foot of the rugged cross. You taught me every life is sacred, feed the hungry and clothe the naked. I learned from you the highest law is love. And I believed you when you said I should trust the words in red to guide my steps through a wicked world. I assumed you'd do the same, so imagine my dismay when I watched you lead the sheep straight to the wolves. You said to love the lost, well, I'm loving you now. You said to speak the truth, well, I'm calling you out. Why don't you live the words that you put in my mouth? May love overcome and justice roll down. Oh, they started putting kids in cages, ripping mothers from their babies, and I looked to you to speak on their behalf. Oh, but all I heard was silence, or worse, you justified it, singing glory, hallelujah, raise the flag. See, your fear turned to hatred, but you baptized it with language torn from the pages of the good book. And you weaponized religion, and you wonder why I'm leaving to find Jesus on the wrong side of your walls. And you said to love the lost, well, I'm loving you now. You said to speak the truth, well, I'm calling you out. Why don't you live the words that you put in my mouth? May love overcome and justice roll down. Come home, come home. You're better than this. Oh, you taught me better than this. Come home, come home. You're better than this. I used to think you were better than this. Come home, come home. Oh. Maybe I was too naive, or I just didn't want to see that there's always been a little poison in the well. Our churches sit on stolen land, a nation built by stolen hands, and we use the Bible to justify it all. Yeah, from slavery and segregation to mass deportation. This is who we are, but not who we have to be. There's a lot of work to do to pull up the evil by the roots, but repentance has to come before there's peace. And you said to love the lost, I'm trying to love you now. You said to speak the truth, that's why I'm calling you out. Why don't you live the that you put in my mouth. May love overcome and justice rule down. May love overcome and justice rule down. May love overcome and justice rule down. May love overcome and justice roll down. Hey, thank you so much.
And this song is called The Hymn for the 81%. You might know where that reference comes from, that in 2016, Donald Trump received 81% of white evangelical support in the election, which allows him to squeak out a victory. But in 2020, Donald Trump did not receive 81% of evangelical support. The number dropped closer to 75%, and in Michigan, it went even lower than that. And if he doesn't receive 81% or higher of white evangelical support in all the swing states, he can't win those swing states. You live in the swingiest state, in the swingiest district, among the swingiest people. I mean, Holland's never been called swingers before, but you are in this election. And I gotta tell you, in the state of Michigan, only 2 counties actually flipped between 2016 and 2020, from voting for Donald Trump to voting for Joe Biden. In the other counties, numbers went up and down, but Donald Trump gained all over the state with black voters, Hispanic voters, Jewish voters, Muslim voters. The voters he lost, evangelicals in Michigan. The 2 counties that flipped, Ottawa County and Kent County, you don't win Ottawa County and Kent County without evangelical and Christian votes moving. That's what happened in Ottawa County. That's what happened in Michigan. That's what happened in Wisconsin. That's what happened in... And the story gets even more interesting. It wasn't just evangelicals, it was white male evangelicals over the age of 40 who did the right thing in that election, and we're hoping they're going to do the right thing in this election the next time. So we know that the work works. So what we're up to is helping people make that shift. Now, Keith is somebody that some of you know. Keith has been a pastor here in this area, and Keith has gone through his own change. 2020, in August, we started putting together, Vote Common Good with a group called Faith in Action, a group called Red Letter Christians, a walk from Charlottesville to Washington, D.C., because the murders had happened in Charlottesville after the Unite the Right rally that some of us remember, the thing that Donald Trump referred to good people on both sides. So we met there, and then we did a walk, 137 miles, with faith leaders into Washington, D.C. to join in the March on Washington memorial event that happened there. Keith joined in that walk. At the time, Keith was pastoring in the area. And Keith, do you mind if I tell this piece of the story? Keith said, if it's okay, I want to be there, but I just can't be too public about being there. I'm there on my own journey. Now Keith is going to be standing behind this microphone because people go on their own journeys. People go on their own changes. And I got to tell you, I've been an evangelical pastor my entire adult life, and watching evangelical pastors and other faith leaders make public changes, it's a really big deal and a really exciting thing. So we're really proud of Keith's story. Glad that he's written it up in a book that Tim Gilman here helped him put together. The book is available over on that table. And these are the kinds of stories that you're hearing. Dan's story in song, Keith's story in a book, Christie's story that she's going to tell you here. These are the stories that start to move people. The thing you know about the Bible, if you spend any time reading it, is it's a first name book. It tells the story of people's change with their first names. The stories of these changes are the stories of the Dans and the Keiths and the Christies and the you and your neighbors and your kids or your parents. People go through changes. We want you to hear about those changes. Keith, thanks for being here. Thanks for bringing this book. And I hope you all go home with a copy of Keith's book if you don't already have one. And if you do already have one, I hope you go home with a copy for a friend or a neighbor.
Thank you. Yeah, wow, that walk was so good. I was so tortured and hiding underneath everything I could anytime somebody had a camera. I had a heavy hat, COVID mask. I hid under everything. I was a very tortured person, so I left a church, some beautiful Christian people there, but then I divorced my denomination to protest religious Trumpism, and promptly lost my faith, and I don't know that I've found it back in the same way again, but I feel at peace and free and thankful and motivated, because I just decided that I had to try to do something, try to say something somehow, even if only a few people read it or maybe many people read it. And so I wrote this little book, and it just came out about a month ago, and it is my story of what it meant to lose my faith, and how I found small, beautiful touches of God outside of the church. And so that's why the book is entitled Unmediated, Simple Faith, Pure Love, Spiritual Growth Without the Interference of Christianity. I am grateful for my heritage. I'll bet Christie will share a bit more about this, because we are of the same heritage. I am grateful, but I just couldn't do it anymore. I just came to the conclusion that some large percent, 81, 71, 75, I don't know, some large percentage of the industry of Christian religion in North America had lost the message of Jesus. At least it lost it for me. So I couldn't be there anymore, and I couldn't teach it anymore. And I received a letter some time ago from a man who is calling upon us all to repent for the sins of America, which is one thing. And then he gives a sequence of prayers in his letter. Father God, I pray for us to have your heart, so that we will abhor these sins in America, abhorring them to the point that we are moved into action, turning our plowshares into swords, stepping into the battle. And then, Father God, I pray that you raise up warrior leaders to take back what the enemy has stolen. And there's a list of all the things. So there's a white-hot core of what is called Christianity, as I see it, in North America, that is like this. Religious extremism, January 6th extremism. And then there's a wider donut of Christian churches and pastors and churchgoers who are around that, who maybe don't subscribe to it, but won't stand against it, won't confront it, don't want to upset it, are appeasing it and capitulating to it. So this woman wrote, she read the book. She said, I went to Reader's World right over here and treated myself to your book. I'm in tears, and I'm only just in the foreword. Wow. My extended family has been fractured due to this political climate. I'm very thankful you wrote this book. Maybe I can feel at peace within my much changed spirituality now, instead of feeling like I'm going to hell if I don't agree with what I was brought up with. And she goes on to say that her elderly mother worships Donald Trump and believes that he is the voice of God. And I think I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I think if you're part of an industry that thinks Donald Trump carries the voice of God, then you have lost the mind of Christ. And I don't even understand fully anymore who Christ is. I'm still trying to figure that out, but I think, no, that's not it. That's not it.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this book to tell the story and to say it's possible I found it takes great determination through a lot of wandering and suffering to stand against that which has raised you all your life. But it has opened up opportunities for me not in my own personal life to have conversations in my family and with friends that I've been avoiding. And that's when you talk about reach one, whatever. There were people in my family, I was just not going there. And with this, I had to go there and explain to them what I believe and why. And so I do have copies. Even if you don't want one, if you could please keep it in mind for people who are just languishing and suffering, or just an increasing number of people who have just said, I can't be in church, but now I don't know who I am. What do I do? This is for them. It's not so much a rail against Donald Trump in detail. It makes hard statements about the church as it supports Donald Trump. So if you would like one, or if you want to talk about it, we can do that. I'm just grateful for a chance to talk about it, and grateful for Vote Common Good for being instrumental in my life and helping me to find my freedom and share this story. So thank you.
Man, thank you. I resonate with that a lot. My name is Joel Michael Herbert. I too lost my job at a mega church over, not quite a song, but it was the same kind of thing. Actually, the same month, maybe even the same week that Dan did. It's pretty funny. It wasn't funny at all, but you know. So, Doug said, I want you to do a song that's like kind of a call to action, because I think I can sit up here and I have a bunch of angry at the church songs. I have a parody of God Bless the USA. I've got, you know, I'm proud to be a millennial because I'm never gonna own my own home. But I can do all that. But I feel like, okay, what's the solution? And kind of like, I'm so sorry, I forgot your name, brother, that just spoke. Keith, kind of like Keith. I have been on a faith journey, and I think probably most of us have been. And I don't know what I believe really about God or Jesus or the church or whatever, but somehow I still keep coming back to the words of Jesus. So I wrote this song a few weeks ago from the words of Jesus, and it doesn't quite sound like it is, because I kind of updated the language a little bit, so I can remember what key it's in. There it is. Okay, so Jesus told this parable, and it's a parable as a kid I just glossed over. You know, as a kid, you like the parable of the sheep that Jesus goes out to find, and the parable of the lost boy and all this, eating with the pigs. Those are exciting. There's this one little, like, one verse parable that Jesus talks about, and it's the parable of the mustard seed. And I have done nothing but think about this parable of the mustard seed for the last year, and I think it's the key to everything Jesus taught. I really do. And this is what it is. He says, the kingdom of God is like a mustard seed. It's the smallest of all the seeds. You plant it into the ground, and it takes over and becomes this giant tree, is what the King James says. It's not really a tree, it's a shrub. Really, mustard seed, we don't really get that here in the States. It's a dandelion is what it is, like functionally. The functional equivalent, it's a weed that is actually wonderful, but nobody wants it around. And the reality of the mustard seed, it's a pest in the Middle East. A dandelion, I want you to think about a dandelion. If you leave one dandelion in your front yard, what happens? In a week, the whole block will be full of dandelions, right? Like, you can't get rid of them. It's the most annoying thing. You have to either go full on at them, or you gotta just, well, I'm gonna make salad, I don't know. So I wrote this song about dandelions, and here it is. I want to live in a world where no one goes to bed hungry, no one falls asleep scared. And I think it's possible to be the agents of change in a world gone crazy. And it's true, the healing of the world comes like the smallest seed, like a candle flickering in the wind. It's true, love only takes over like a pesky weed, like an earworm that you just can't forget, like dandelions taking over the government. I think it's not unrealistic to melt all the guns down, make plowshares out of ballistics. Tennessee. Temples and mosques full of outcasts. Churches and shuls giving land back. What's right in front of you, right hand. It's true. The healing of the world comes like a maple seedling pushing through a crack in the stone. It's true, love only works like a pinch of yeast working its way through a batch of sourdough, like ivy taking over the House of Lords. And the prophets say the world will be saved by a little child. God bless the grass. The scriptures are painted on the subway tiles in tenement halls. Blessed are the poor. Blessed are those who mourn. And it's true. The only way to live is to lay it all down, let go and just surrender it all. It's true. Wisdom is learning to lean and how to pierce through all the noise and just rest. Just rest. Like dandelions taking over the government. It's possible to be the agents of change in a world gone crazy.
Thanks, Joel. It's a wonderful song. How about another warm round of applause for Joel there? Hey everybody, my name is Nick Brock. I am the executive director or local organizer for Vote Common Good West Michigan. Thank you. The only official chapter nationwide for this Vote Common Good deal. There's Vote Common Goods, or Catholics for Vote Common Good, and then there's Vote Common Good West Michigan. So I started that in 2020 after hooking up with Doug and Dan and some of the other guys, and after the election ended there, with the prevention of Donald Trump being in office, I said to Doug, hey, what do you think about me starting just a little thing here in West Michigan, because it's the Silicon Valley, if you will, of white evangelical Christianity. So it's going great, and it's working out really well. And a big part of the work that I do is connecting with local candidates to create deeper narratives at the intersection of faith and politics. And one way that I do that within the past year is hosting a podcast called Common Good Conversations, which can be found wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I often have the privilege of being in conversation with a lot of interesting people here locally within Ottawa County, Kent County, and then the surrounding areas. But really most recently, it's been connecting with candidates who have committed to the common good. And so this means that these extraordinary, ordinary Americans throughout West Michigan have committed to 6 principles. So I just want to read these principles, and then I'll have these candidates come up here, and then we're going to just talk for a little bit, about 15 minutes, and talk about what that means to them. So these 6 principles include trustworthy leadership. It means committed to earning public trust by embodying a deep sense of civic responsibility as a public servant. Responsible governance, committed to practicing accountability, teamwork, prudence, moderation, and justice. Third, genuine belonging, and that might sound familiar to a lot of you here in Ottawa County, committed to serving the needs of the entire community over self-interest and partisan needs alone. Ethical conduct, committed to performing their responsibilities with integrity, and refraining from engaging in dishonest matters of financial or personal influence. And the last two are service before self, committing to their oath of office with professionalism, courage, and humility. And then finally, but certainly not the least of these, is love in politics. And hopefully you have a little bookmark that says what exactly that means. Committing to an ethic of love in their personal and political life. So those are the 6 principles that some of these candidates tonight have committed to. 3, Chris Kleinjans, Danielle Smith, and Doug Zylstra. And so I'd ask you if any of these commitments resonate with you as a voter, especially here in Ottawa County, where we know what's gone on with Ottawa Impact and how a lot of us voters have felt that they have forgotten those principles. I'd offer you just a little hand clap or round of applause to let the community know that these are things worthy of committing to in the community. So I'd like to invite these candidates up here, because one of the most interesting things about what I do is learning about these candidates and how they have already been advocates for these in the community, even before they decided to run for office. You guys can come up right here. Come join me on this magic blue carpet. Or how, as candidates or current commissioners, they want to see these principles come to life through local budgets, setting policy, making law, and the like. So again, many of these extraordinary, ordinary Americans already exemplify these principles, so I'm really glad to support them in their cause and amplify their voice. So before we get into all of these real hard-hitting questions here, I want to start us off with some of your go-tos. Some of your go-tos for this campaign. So the campaign has been going on for a while. Many, this is your first or second go-around. So some of the go-to essentials for, maybe when you get home, you participate in something that knocks off the edge a little bit, or even when you go out on the campaign trail, gives you a little boost. So we'll start with Chris, and then we'll go the way down.
All right. Going out. Doors are hard. Doors are tricky, and it's not something I come to naturally. But the go-to now is that the doors have never failed to lift me. And what I mean by that is the conversations have been, some have been exemplary, some have been a little weird. But in the main, what I found is that the first 10 are like getting the shakes out, but after that, it's been a genuinely great experience. And I thought I knew a lot about where I lived before. I knew a tons of what I know now because I've met so many more people and so many more of my neighbors and fellow humans that it makes the idea of service more compelling.
So just getting a little loose and limber before you go for those doors. And you, Danielle?
This is my second time running for office, so I don't have as much experience as this guy over here. But I think what motivates me now as I'm campaigning, it's when I'm showing up to some of these events and I'm looking out in the audience and I'm recognizing people. I'm seeing people who, they're doing the work. They're engaged with the community. They've become passionate. They're educating voters on the issues that we face in the county. And my first time around, it felt a little bit lonely, and people didn't know what the commission was, and they weren't paying attention maybe to some of the local politics. And now I see some of these faces out here that I'm proud of. I'm proud to be your neighbor. And I'm proud to be running for office. So you are keeping me motivated in the conversations that I'm having as I'm going door to door.
Yeah, good to have some support. All right, Doug, what gets you going or helps to knock the edge off?
So I started running in 2014, and for those of you who don't know, county commission terms are 2-year terms, so basically running every other year. I think Doug mentioned this, and I think it's a really interesting point about inviting folks, right? So, whether you're knocking on someone's door, whether you're meeting them in the supermarket, seeing them in the street, seeing them in church, it's about inviting them, to see you as a candidate. Obviously, you can't get away from being a candidate, and I think the adjustment you have to make as a candidate, that no matter where you are a candidate, and people see that, and making sure that you're inviting them to how you want to serve them, right? We've all pledged to be the common good candidates, and I think what unites us is the idea of serving the common good, right? And again, knocking on doors, seeing folks wherever you see them, keeping the idea of inviting them to, hopefully support you as a candidate, and as a Democrat in Ottawa County, I have the pleasure of representing the city of Holland, but these two folks are doing the work on the north side in Park Township, and being a Democrat in Ottawa County is not always easy, but making sure that folks know that you're there for them, and your goal is to serve the community. So.
Yeah. So I want you can keep the
Sure.
keep the mic there. So I want to talk about you. You were being kind of inspired by this invitation, or wanting to invite people into what we're doing. So that's a part of the work that we do is we invite people in. We invite candidates to come into the work as common good candidates. So I wonder, out of these 6 principles, trustworthy leadership, responsible governance, and the like, was there one commitment that when the invitation was extended and you're looking over, you're like, yeah, that one check is for me? Could you explain
I
what
was
one means
actually
the most and
looking at
why?
that because I think it's the 3rd or 4th one. Can you read them real quickly? The
Yeah,
third-
yeah. Trustworthy leadership, responsible governance, genuine belonging, ethical conduct, service before self, and love in politics.
I think it's basically all of them.
All of them. Just check the whole box.
So,
Sounds real good.
The idea that, we're here not because, being a county commissioner is being something, it's again serving, right? It's the doing part, right? And so I think that's why, I made that commitment, and Chris and Danielle can speak for themselves, but I think that's, why we're all here, right?
Yeah, Danielle.
Yeah,
for
I
you?
mean, sign me up for all of them, right?
All of them.
But,
They're just perfect.
But, if I think back to why I put my name in to begin with, to me it comes back to belonging. I have had the pleasure of raising 2 beautiful, intelligent, motivated girls. And I want them to use their voice. I want them to be welcome here. I want them to want to come home. I have one off to college right now. I want her to be proud to call this her home. Most of my background has been in workforce development and human resources. And the biggest challenge that I see in trying to get people here to West Michigan is inclusion. It really is. And it's unfortunate that our reputation it's tarnished, right? And we all have a job to do, right? If we want to have our families feel comfortable in this community.
Yes, obviously all the tenants are super important, but the hook for me was service above self. I come out of a service-driven family to a degree. Military service has all been part of our lives, but that's kind of like your intro, your gateway. Over 2 decades of nonprofit work, and nonprofit work wasn't. It was just the thing that seemed like what I wanted to do, and that's service-driven. You're essentially, and I understand the jokes. I've been the butt of some of those jokes. That, yeah, no one gets rich doing nonprofit work, and that's true. Very true. But it's the idea that you're doing work for your fellow human, on behalf of your. Whether it's, I worked over there at that museum for 7 years, teaching people about history. I've worked helping people gain access to food and lead healthier lifestyles. And now I'm helping develop housing. I wanted, at some point I decided that what I wanted to do was going to be tied to how much better I left the area around me. And the service piece has been critical to that. And so that's what, when you called, that was the one that got me.
Right. So you stole a little bit of my thunder there, Chris, because my second question was, in what way have you advocated for that principle? So is there, anything else that you want to add, or we can keep moving down?
One more thing, I was at a ribbon cutting today for a big new Spank and Cool building over on the north side that helps educate adult members of our community that are intellectually and developmentally disabled or mentally impaired. And in the rollout for that, as people were jumping up and making speeches, because that's what you do at a ribbon cutting, it was, a community is measured by how well it cares for its most vulnerable. And to that end, that's always been my focus. I know it's always been this community's focus, but that focus might have gotten a little less sharp in the recent months, but I know that's where our heart's at.
And what was the
mine was-
principle that you've been advocating
mine
for?
was belonging and inclusion, and so I have years of experience working in that area in human resources, really helping businesses and communities attract and retain people with different perspectives and different needs. I think specifically as it's relating to the challenges that we have at the county level, I think we can all agree that access to health services, affordable housing, all of those things matter. Childcare, how do we meet the needs of a diverse population? And that's something that I've been very passionate about, and I've had the opportunity to work on here locally.
Yeah, when Danielle talks about belonging, and I look at the sign that says "Democracy for All." I wouldn't say I've had the pleasure of being on the board the last 2 years.
What would you call it?
I've had the experience of being on the board the last 2 years. And people come up to me and you're doing all right, and I appreciate that. But at the end, it does give me purpose, because I know that we need to do better on the Ottawa County Board, and as politicians across the board, from Congress to presidency, we all need to do better making sure that our government works for everyone. And I hope that over the last 2 years, over the last 6 years, I have been able to do that a bit, right? It's always a struggle. There's 11 commissioners, and Chris realizes it once he's on the board that getting from A to B is hard, and much less getting from A to Z, right? So, but I think advocating for all county residents is something that drives me. And when you're waking up and you're like, okay, my schedule says 2 or 3 hours knocking on doors. Well, why are we doing that? Well, to make this place a more inclusive place for everyone, right? And hopefully that my presence on the board, and hopefully that continues into 25, and Chris and Danielle will be there with me, and we continue advocating for a place for everyone here in this county, so that my kids and Danielle's kids, and they can come back and feel like they belong too. So.
All right, final question. So, Doug, you were talking about that a little bit already. So, I wonder when you hear the phrase, faith, hope, and love, or you see the phrase, or even supporting democracy for all, is there a particular vision or word or something that comes to mind that I don't know, you just kind of feel inward and would want to share with people and kind of let know throughout your campaign?
Sure. Well, I look at the word hope, because if anyone's seen the board for the last 2 years, in order to run for office, you have to be hopeful, right? You have to hope that we can, be a county government for everyone. I'm optimistic that we will. I'm optimistic that, with Chris and Danielle on the board and myself, that we will get to a place where, like I said, that everyone belongs. And so, yeah, the hope is what drives us, right? And, obviously our love for our community, and faith that we can all get there, right? But for me, hope is a big part of what drives me as a candidate and as a commissioner. So.
I think of those words, to me, I kind of go back to what my dad always told me when growing up: can't, never, did, nothing. Right? It's perseverance. We got to get after it. We've got work to do. It's really time to take action, right? And this is when we need to step up and really give it our all.
I think for me, faith perhaps most. Faith in the notion that my idea about the people that I live with and around is not quantified by what I've had the opportunity to live through watching up at the Board of Commissioners for the past 2 years. I'm an undergrad in history, so the whole goal is a more perfect union, and I don't claim to be able to define what that looks like. All I know is I want to work for it, and this happened to be the avenue that was shown to me to where I could do the work. And you don't start it when we started the recall at a very grim period. There's a couple of us out here who remember that, and it was because it was the only thing that we had within the system that could affect change. It started with hope, and that's carried me through everything I've done and everything I'm going to continue to do.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate all of you committing to the common good and for running for office in the county. So this Chris Kleinjans, District 2, Danielle Smith, District 1, and Doug Zylstra, District 3. Thanks so much for coming up here and sharing with the folks. All right, final thing from me is if you know of any candidates who should be included on this list, I'd love to talk with them, or I'd love to reach out with them. So you can meet me at the back and we can chat about that. So thanks so much. Thank you, Dan.
Well, I'm going to share a couple little stories with you today. 4 years ago, my 11-year-old daughter and I were in the front yard doing some lawn work. We live out in the country. A pickup slowed. The window rolled down. And a grown man venomously shouted, I don't even know if I can say these words here. There's no children, I'll just say it. He said, "Fuck you, you communist cunts." He tossed a half-empty beer can at our Biden-Harris sign and peeled away, burning the rubber of his tires into the pavement as a series of giant MAGA flags ripped loudly in the wind from the back of his Chevy. This wasn't the first incident, and it wouldn't be the last. Yard signs that weren't stolen over the course of the campaign season had been pissed on, vandalized, and had many, many beer cans chucked at them. People threw trash on our lawn. Our mailbox was vandalized more than once. Obscenities were screamed from vehicle windows on a regular basis. As many of you know, threats eventually got so bad for our family, we had to move out of our house because there were serious concerns for our safety. I've been doing political dialogue training for around a decade now. And the way we talk to each other and about each other matters. Words matter. The rhetoric of our leaders really matters because they're leaders. Their words and the way they live are examples that are followed. Throughout history, some of the worst atrocities, genocide, oppression, slavery, violent movements like this always began with dehumanizing rhetoric. Dehumanization is the groundwork. It's always part of the preparation for such things. When leaders repeat a narrative that denigrates a population of people, this is a way of opening minds and softening hearts to accept whatever inhumane or unconscionable actions are to come. Donald Trump has been a master of manipulation. He's built his whole campaign on a bedrock of slander and lies. His dehumanizing rhetoric inspires bullying on playgrounds and general acts of violence towards women, people of color, immigrants, Muslims, Asian Americans, Democrats, the LGBTQ community, and even towards Republicans who don't get fully in line behind him. This way of talking about people is a method used by dictators and authoritarians. And let's be clear, Republican leaders up and down the ticket who refuse to hold Trump accountable are complicit in this reprehensible rhetoric. As well as whatever it leads to. The normalization of dehumanizing language is not only slanderous and sinful, it's dangerous. Its explicit goal is not to inspire hope, but to instill fear. It's intended to divide us. As people of faith, Jesus invites us to take up our cross and follow him into a selfless and sacrificial way of loving the world. Rather than carry a cross, Donald Trump grabs the hammer and drives in the nails day after day after day. You've probably seen the big mobile Ottawa County Patriot sign that moves between locations around town. It's full of filth and lies and extremism so severe it would be laughable if it wasn't inspiring grown-ass men in big trucks to scream indecent obscenities at little girls playing in their front yards. This is just one of the local efforts that's being used to drum up fear in the hearts of Ottawa County towards Democrats. It's another campaign built on godless slander. I suspect the ones who created that sign, they know that what they say is sick and twisted and untruthful and causing untold harm towards actual people in this county. They're just hoping you don't know that. And they also know what Donald Trump knows, that if they repeat their lies over and over, the human brain begins to believe the narrative and act on it. I was once a loyal political conservative. I spent a good part of my youth volunteering for the Republican Party. I studied political science and worked for a Republican on Capitol Hill because I believed in the Republican Party and its values. But the Republican Party is no longer a conservative movement. It's no longer a values-driven party. With some brave exceptions, this has become a party that has been baptized in the waters of Trumpism, reborn in his image, remaking itself into a party driven by a gospel of lies and harmful slander. Words matter. The words we speak matter. Leaders who are reckless and feckless with their words breed communities steeped in hatred and ignorance of what is true, of what is good, of what is noble. Hatred paired with ignorance is a recipe for violence. It's no coincidence that since Donald Trump first came to power, the FBI has stated that the greatest threat to safety and democracy in America is not Islamic extremism. It is not undocumented immigrants, but white, male, right-wing extremists. Words matter. I don't have to tell you that I'm angry. I'm angry about the hateful movement one demagogue of a man has sparked and inspired in pockets all across the country. But you know, I'm mostly sad. I'm sad to be watching the great American experiment unravel in my lifetime. I'm sad to watch so many good-hearted people, decent people, people who are our neighbors, our friends, our family, fall prey to the slick tricks of power-hungry politicians and the propaganda media machine that repeats their dehumanizing narratives. I'm sad so many of these folks live in utter fear of things that aren't even real. I've been a bit silent about politics in the last few years. And some of my friends and some of you have been asking, where are you? Where have you been? Why didn't you go to this event? I didn't see you here. Hey, there's a fundraiser over here. Are you coming? The truth is, I have been exhausted. I'm still burned out from the last campaign season. Still a bit traumatized and shell-shocked by all that has unfolded in recent years, but I'm here now. I shared with you about the kind of traffic we were getting in front of our yard during the campaign 4 years ago, but I have one more story to share. This popped up in my Facebook memories, thank you Facebook, a couple months ago, and lit a fire under my feet, compelling me to pour myself back into this work. Some of you might remember this story. It got passed around quite a lot. This is my post. A truck pulled in the drive. I was home alone with the kids. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest as the driver door swung open. My first thought was that if this guy was feeling emboldened enough to piss on our Biden-Harris sign in broad daylight, what else was he capable of? Should I take the kids and run out the back door? Should we hide in the basement? In an effort to prevent the man from coming near the door, I took a deep breath, stepped outside, and said across the lawn in my best bossy voice, "Can I help you?" I wanted him to know that I was there, that I see him, that I was a strong woman and a mother not to be messed with. And an 80-plus-year-old man slowly lifted his legs out of the truck and came a few steps into the grass. "Well, I saw your Biden sign in the yard," he said, and I just had to stop in. "Oh," I replied. I prepared myself by mentally buckling in and getting ready to be taken for a ride of verbal assaults. I stood my ground, began putting up all my emotional walls. But instead of going off on a rant, he got choked up and blinked-backed the substance of his watery eyes. "You know," he finally croaked out, "I've been a Republican my whole life. I voted for Donald Trump in 2016 with hesitancy, but I did that." He shook his head. "And not a day has gone by that my mind has not replayed the scene of me checking the box for this president on my ballot. Not a day has passed without regret for the way I voted. I've been a proud Republican my whole life. I swore I would be to the grave. But now I feel a terrible shame for the way my party has unraveled and deteriorated under the leadership of Trump. And I helped put him there. And so I saw your sign and I just had to stop to say, I'm sorry. I'm just so sorry." His voice got shaky and he paused as he fought to collect himself. I stood silently with some mix of compassion and curiosity etched in my face, looking across the lawn at this aging man, bent over and sad. I wasn't sure if he was apologizing to me personally because of the Biden sign, or to the whole world for the impact of his one vote. In one fell swoop, he continued, our fundamental values are just gone. Truth no longer matters, basic decency no longer matters, the whole country is being torn apart at the seams, and this selfish president only cares that his side wins the bigger piece, no matter what scheming is required to get it. And my whole party seems to have gotten in line right behind him. My once value-driven, truth-centered party is just dead. I no longer recognize it. And I don't expect it will ever be recovered in my lifetime, because once your integrity is gone, you don't just decide to get it back. You have to earn it back. And that takes time. And I just don't think I'll be around anymore by the time that happens. And it all makes me feel so terrible. He shook his head again. I was too stunned for words, near tears myself. This was such a strange and unexpected visit from a stranger. Releasing this confession from his lips seemed to release a weight from his soul. It was a balm for my own spirit as well. He went on again after a pause. Well, anyways, I've been driving by this house and seeing this Biden sign, and I have been wanting to stop in and see the face of the brave people who are standing up amidst a whole sea of people to say, enough. And I wanted you to know that you've given me the courage to think that maybe I can put a Biden sign up too. You know, then you don't have to be so alone out here, and we can stand together. I wanted to reach across the distance and give this sweet, tormented man a hug. Instead, I thanked him for stopping in, thanked him for his solidarity. And I promised him that if I'm still here after he's gone, I will keep standing and keep speaking and keep demanding truth and keep working towards a better world for everyone. He got back in his pickup and drove away. And that's what gave me the kick in the pants, the reminder of that conversation, to get back, to get involved again. This is the most consequential election in our lifetime. Truth is on the ballot. Democracy is on the ballot. And as we've seen so clearly here in Ottawa County, every vote matters at every level of government. Every vote matters. Every donation matters. Every hour volunteering matters. Your vote is your voice for the kind of world you want to leave to all who will come behind you. So I'm excited about the candidates we have here in Ottawa County. We've got some quality people of integrity here today who have spoken truth and who offer such a hopeful vision of the kind of community we can create and foster together. A community where everyone belongs. A community where leaders are held accountable to truth and good governance. A community of peace and justice, of diversity, of equity, of inclusion, of joy and safety and abundance. A community where everyone is embraced and beloved and given the opportunity to thrive. I'm so glad to be with you here today, to be back on my feet, to be back in this work. Thanks for letting me share my story.
Christie, we are so glad that you are back. And Christie was on our bus in 2018 when we started this whole effort, and messaged earlier and said, hey, could we talk about traveling again? So Christie's going to be back on this bus. And friends, we want you all on this bus too. And there's a couple of ways that that can happen. One is we literally want you to take a pen that's right over there hanging off the open gas tank and put your name on the bus. We really do want your name on the bus. The back side of this bus is nearly full. We now want to fill up this side of the bus. And then we're coming back here in October. We're going to be back here in this part of Michigan. We're going to be in other parts with yet another bus. There's going to be 2 of us. And then we want some people traveling around with us. So maybe you want to travel a bit with us. Maybe in your own car, maybe hopping on the bus. And we go and we do these kinds of events all over the state of Michigan. And we're going to Pennsylvania, and we're going to Georgia, and we're going to Arizona. We're even going to California and Kansas City and Minnesota. And we're going all over the place, but especially in those places that matter. So we want you on that bus with us. Whether it's just your name or you want to travel with us, please do. And then we want you to follow us and let people know that we're coming to their town, that people like you know people like them, and you want them to know people like us. This really goes a long way. What Christie so eloquently described there is something we like to call the gift of going first. The person who does it first so that others can then come along. We'd like to invite you to be the people that go first. Maybe you want to go home with one of these yard signs. One of these faith, not fear, hope, not hate, love for all, and I support democracy signs. Then you pair it with a candidate sign. Then you've got a candidate sign, this one, and I promise you it's going to get people talking in your neighborhood. Maybe they're going to take it, or maybe they'll just take it in. So we'd love you to take one of those signs. We also have those cards. Maybe somebody handed you one of the postcards. We're going to invite you to make a donation and take home a group of postcards. We have them in packs of 15. With 15 mailing addresses of faith voters that we know vote for Republicans most regularly here in these 2 districts, in Ottawa County and Kent County. So we'd like you to take one of those postcards, fill those things out, and you know what they say on them if you already looked at them? They say on the card, will you join me as a person of faith in voting for love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control, and Harris Walls? And then you can write on the backside one of the other candidates you want. And I promise you, you put that thing in the mailbox with a stamp on it, and someone's going to say, I've never had someone ask me to do this. It really goes a long way. You take a yard sign, you take home a packet of postcards, you start reaching out to your neighbors, and you're the one who will be the first one to ever send them a postcard. And then in a few weeks, you're going to start seeing billboards around here off Christie's comments. Words Matter. It's our His Words Matter billboard campaign. It's got a quote from Jesus on one side and a quote and a photo of Donald Trump on the other. Things like, turn the other cheek, and I want to punch him in the face. We're going to do these whole ad campaigns because we believe that words matter. And people who say that they're people of the word are going to be reminded that they can respond in a different way. Now, what we're not doing is asking anyone to make our nation a Christian nation. We're not asking anyone to make our government a Christian government. We're asking Christian voters to vote for things that they know matter for the common good for all of us. The difference between Christian nationalism and Christians who get engaged in their nation is Christian nationalists want to make sure that Christians are most in charge, that first Christians are taken care of, that our laws are established on Christian doctrine, and that is not what we're asking anyone to do. We want this to be a democracy for all. Now, that's part of the reason why tomorrow in Grand Haven we'll be running an hour-and-a-half-long training on how do we respond when we're confronted with Christian nationalism. What do we do when it comes into our counties, when it comes into our churches, when it comes into our families? What is the response? Because it's hard. Look, Americans have been fighting about whether this should be a Christian or nation or not from before its founding. And we will still have that argument tomorrow, and we'll have it 100 days from tomorrow. And we need to be good at having that conversation. How do people of Christian faith and Muslim faith and no faith and Hindu faith and Jewish faith, how do we all participate in this democracy together? Never telling each other to be quiet, but always telling one another that we all have something to contribute. So that's what we're up to. We're going to be doing that training tomorrow. Then we're going to have a rally like this over in Grand Rapids on Thursday. And then we're going to be over in Green Bay on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And then we are really going to Kansas City. And then we're going to Nashville. And then we're going to Georgia. And then we're going to Arizona. And then we're going to California. And you know what gets us around this country? Well, 4 things. You know 3 of them already because they're right there. Faith, hope, and love. And right below it is the 4th. You see it? Diesel fuel only gets us around this country. So if you want to be on the bus, we'd love to have your signature. But if you want to be in the tank with us, any contribution you make goes right into that gas tank. And it fuels this diesel bus and pushes us around the country. If you're a regular contributor to Vote Common Good, thank you. We appreciate that a lot. That's what helps us have food to eat. people have their needs taken care of on the bus, but any donations that we get from things like this really does go in to get us from place to place. So if you're up for making a donation and taking home a yard sign or taking home a shirt or a packet of postcards or something like that, none of us are making any money off of all that. All that just goes for expenses. So we'd love to have you in the tank with us. We'd love to have you on the bus with us. We'd love to have you in people's mailboxes with us. And we'd love to have you participate with us as we come forward and go through town again. And I also want to say that some people that wanted to be at this meeting couldn't be because they're at a meeting in that building about building a warming house between the white building and the brown building for people that have to live outside in this neighborhood. And they said that that was going on, and I said to them, well, maybe if we get done in time, which we are, you all could pop over into that meeting. So if you haven't had enough, then pop over there and see if you can help some people build a warming house, is what they're calling it in that spot right there. And so we're so grateful for you being here. Thank you very much. Tim would be glad to see you over there at the table. Thank you, Christie. Thank you, candidates. Thank you, Keith. Thank you to all of you for being here. And we'll see you next time we're in town. Thanks so much.